Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Mike here at Game From Scratch. And have you ever watched a friend go down a very self-destructive road where they just did, terrible thing after terrible thing to themselves, and you think it's time for an intervention? Well, I'm feeling that way with Unity lately. And right now, we're talking about Unity's plans, pricing, and packaging update. Basically, they have a new pricing system, and it is quite literally the worst conceived way of monetizing Unity that I can think of. And so there have been a number of changes to their plans and something else. We'll get to the something else in just a second. I'm going to start things off with a happy note. Let's talk about the good things here. And the good things are for indie developers at the entry level. And it's definitely gotten better for you because the Unity Personal Edition has definitely improved. First off, you can now use it. You can, even if you make $100,000 a year or more, or you're a well-funded company. So until you actually start making money now, you can use Unity Personal. That is definitely a win. At the same time, you're getting a couple of other new features here. Not really a big deal, to be honest. Mostly it's bundled in with services they want to hook you on anyways. But the key thing here is they're changing up the way that the pricing works. So Unity Personal will remain free and will be removing their annual limit of revenue of $100,000. So that means a lot of people will actually be able to start their project using Unity Personal, even companies, even well-funded companies, and you're not going to have to upgrade to a premium version of it until you start making money. So that is definitely a nice improvement. Another thing we've got here is they are removing the annual revenue limit of 100,000 USD for the use on Unity Personal plan. Games made with Unity Personal that have 200,000 USD or more per year and at least 200,000 lifetime installs will be subject to the Unity runtime fee. And that Unity runtime fee, you might be going, okay, what is this? And what it is one of the single dumbest things I have ever heard of in my life. It is how Unity decided to make more money off of Unity, and honestly, I think it's going to end them in court. So let's get into the actual blog post here. So effective January the 1st, 2024, we will introduce a new Unity runtime fee that's based on game installs. We will also add cloud-based asset storage, Unity DevOps tools, and AI at runtime at no extra cost to Unity subscription plans this November. So basically, the beginning of next year, this runtime fee is going to kick in. As many of you may know, Unity is in fact two substantial software components, the editor and the runtime. Now, this is stupid in my humble opinion because that's an implementation detail. When you buy Visual Studio, you don't worry about the .NET runtime. It's just, it is a piece that makes the piece work. So basically, the Unity runtime is like the shim that runs on each different platform that enables Unity to work. It's an implementation detail. You as an end user don't care about the runtime. It is literally just what makes Unity work cross-platform. Obviously, they have to maintain it, but they have to maintain the editor. It is part of the product they offer. So the Unity runtime is code that executes on player devices and makes Unity for games work at scale with billions of monthly downloads. We are introducing a Unity runtime fee that is based upon each time a qualifying game is downloaded by an end user. We choose this because each time a game is downloaded, the Unity runtime is also installed. We believe that an initial install-based fee allows creators to keep the ongoing financial gains from player engagement, unlike a revenue share. So if you're working with a live service model, the theory here is, you're only paying the fee once per install as opposed to over and over and over like you do with a rev share for Unreal Engine. But the reality is right now, you're paying for a per-seat license. And going forward, guess what? You're still paying for a per-seat license. Just on top of that, you now get to pay this fee each time someone installs your game. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, okay, isn't that a little problematic? How are they going to track how users install your game? And you're very right. That is very, very problematic because it means a couple of things. Either more labor on your end as you have to report, say, monthly to Unity how many installs you had, or they're going to have to integrate it with the various different app stores, which then means if, for example, it is fraudulently downloaded and pirated from the Android Play Store, are you going to be responsible for those installs that you're not making any money for? Or finally, is it going to have code that dials home, which is problematic and against regulations for a number of different regions, including North America, EU, etc. So none of those solutions are good. This is all threshold driven. So if you're using Unity Personal and Unity Plus, by the way, you won't be using Unity Plus because they killed it off, which I don't think is a bad thing, to be honest, because of the changes they've made to Unity Personal, but we'll get back to that in just a second. So these games that have made $200,000 or more in the last 12 months and have at least 200,000 200,000 lifetimes installs are going to have to make the fee. So any install past that $200,000, you are paying a fee for each time that game is installed. Unity Pro and Enterprise, those are going to be after $1 million threshold and or more in the last 12 months and have at least 1 million lifetime installs. So that means if a game is, shipped 1 million copies and it's making $40 per user, it's not going to really hurt that much. It's going to be a small fee for them. But if it is a game that literally makes about $1 a user with 1 million shipped, this is going to represent like 12% of your revenue, not profit, revenue. So we'll get back to the pricing in just a second. It is all tiered based on exactly where you are. By the way, if you are currently under kind of an end user license agreement, multi-year deal, this doesn't kick in until that deal ends. So how is this going to work? Well, after $200,000 are made, and $200,000, and by the way, this is all ands. So $200,000 made and 200,000 installs, you're going to now pay 20 cents per install, just as a tax, as a fee. Like that's the new Unity tax. Welcome to it. 20 cents per install after the revenue threshold. Now, if you're a Unity Pro user, after 100,000, it is 15 cents per install. Then becomes 7.5 cents per install at the 100,000 to 500,000 threshold. And as you see, it kind of keeps getting smaller and smaller as you go up. And then in emerging markets, their example was such as India. You're going to be paying 1 cent per install. Generally, you'll make less per user in those markets. And if you lock into their other services, hey, we won't charge you this new tax, which is, this is actually tying, and in some markets that's actually illegal. So it'd be interesting to see how that turns out. So pricing change, seats aren't changing. You are getting some additional functionality here as well. So for example, Unity Personal, you will get the Unity Asset Manager, free tier with 10 gigabytes storage, a maximum of 3 DevOps seats featuring 5 gigs of storage, and 200 Windows build minutes and team administrative-based roles. So if you want to use their cloud services stuff, this is very much focused on people that are doing live service or in-app purchase-oriented games. You can just tell by the way the revenue system is structured. If you're like a one-and-done type game, like the way games used to be, this hurts you a lot more than an ongoing live service game. And also these new perks like the Unity Asset Manager, DevOps, etc., are really mostly just useful to those people. Some details are coming. This actually doesn't exist yet. It is coming in the future. So it'd be interesting to see exactly what's there. And as I mentioned earlier on, Plus is being retired. Truth of the matter is now that Personal has removed those revenue requirements, Plus doesn't really make a lot of sense anymore. And if you are currently a Plus subscriber, you're going to get an offer of a year of premium premium, I believe it's called. I always forget the name of it. I guess Pro. Sorry, you're going to get an email mid-October for a year of Unity Pro at the Unity Plus price. So if you are currently a Plus developer for 1 year, you just bonused out because you basically got upgraded for a tier that costs 3 or 4 times more for the same price you are paying right now. And if you are a personal user, this is actually advantageous to you unless your game ends up being very successful. So we got, again, the breakdown of things. I already talked about the personal aspects of it. The FAQ talks about some of the other aspects here. And it's nuts. To give you a direct parallel of how this runtime fee works, imagine if Microsoft took Visual Studio and then they decided that Visual Studio runtime, so the .NET runtime or VB runtime or whatever, they suddenly want to start charging a fee for it. Well, as of January 1st, 2024, they would basically say, okay, for every .NET install of your product, you now owe us money. And the kicker is, this is for all Unity users. This isn't retroactive or future active or anything. This is all installs past X date. So if you shipped and published your game 5 or 10 years ago, but it uses the Unity runtime, this applies to you. This isn't just new people signing up going forward. So essentially what they've done is added a royalty-like fee structure onto a per-seat license. Now, again, it is tiered towards the amount of money you make, and that's the other part of this that I find a little crazy is they're actually hitting their most successful customers. Because if you really look at what's changing with these price changes, again, at the entry level, at the indie level, this is advantageous. You actually have you have reduced limitations on what you can do with Personal. You can start using Personal until you start making money, and that really wasn't the way it was before. So Personal is much more powerful than it used to be, but for the people that are actually out there making money with Unity, this is just a straight up tax. And I'm going to tell you a scenario here. Let's say I wrote the game Firewatch, and Firewatch still sells to this day. So let's imagine that I wrote Firewatch and it still sells over the threshold required here, which it probably does. I now have to pay for a fee that I never agreed to. Do you know how I would respond to that? I would respond to that by telling them it rhymes with F and U, and then I would send it to my lawyer and let my lawyer deal with this, because you can't renegotiate a contract like this. I asked them straight out at the Unity team if this has been vetted thoroughly by their lawyers, because this is... I don't know how you could just change the deal and suddenly say, okay, to use our runtime. Like if Microsoft said, all right, now if you want to use the .NET runtime, you have to pay us 2 cents per install. You would have blood in the streets. Nobody would use Visual Studio anymore. And that is essentially what Unity have just done. And they are doing it, again, to all titles. Now, again, you don't have to pay for the installs up till January 24th. So, again, in the Firewatch scenario, let's say it sold 10 million copies from now until January 24th, they don't pay this fee on them. But for every copy thereafter, even though that game was published and it was bought under a license that doesn't necessarily agree with it, they're asking for this money to be collected. Now, they're a little wishy-washy on how exactly that is going to be tracked, and there's a lot of devils in that little detail, and I'll be interested to see how it works out. On top of that, we have a couple of other things that were thrown in. They've got Unity Centis being tossed in. This is a way of running AI models. It's being included for free. I find this actually a little bit funny because it used to be called something called Barracuda until AI became a buzzword. Barracuda has existed for a very long time, and it was always free. So now you can use this free AI thing that used to be free and is now free again, but hey, it's a feature here. So that one's a little bit ungreat. By the way, if you're already in DevOps, you'll get free seat allocations for the new DevOps stuff. There are new DevOps features coming in. So DevOps is stuff for doing like continuous improvements and tracking and bug fixing, etc., on your stuff going forward. Also for tracking the number of installs, how things work, etc. That is an aspect of it, but people, I don't know, coupling it in to use your DevOps as a feature, again, it's only relevant if you're doing a live service style game or, that's just, if you're in a mobile focused title. DevOps probably means more to you than if you're just doing a desktop game, especially because a lot of desktop games do not like games that dial home. And then finally, we've got the Asset Manager. This is currently in beta. General availability in November. Unity Asset Manager provides robust 3D asset management, user administration, content transformation, and security capabilities to increase the discoverability, reuse, and ROI, or return on investment, of both created and licensed content across your organization. Unity Plus users will receive 10 gigabytes of storage per organization, non-cab web viewer, asset versioning, integrations with Unity version control, etc., as part of this as well. So those are the other features you're getting out of this. Mostly stuff that nobody asked for, if we're honest. If you're working on a mobile title, the DevOps stuff definitely might be of interest to you, but for the rest of people, not so much. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is today's announcement. Unity's new pricing system. They are going to be introducing a tax on their runtime. And you may be asking yourself, okay, well, what about if I run it on multiple platforms? So if I've shipped a game for Windows, Android, and Xbox, and a user buys it on 3 platforms, I surely only pay the fee once, right? 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 No. And we also, again, we're completely missing details on how the reporting is going to happen on this, how the tracking is going to happen on this. There's a lot of details that need to be fleshed out. I honestly think that this entire thing is a massive mistake. I do like the change for personal. So if you are an indie developer, you have greater flexibility with personal. I like the fact that personal basically replaced Plus. Plus doesn't make a lot of sense with the reduced limitations on personal. Everything else is terrible. And that is my take. But I'm curious, what do you think? What do you think of Unity's new tax? Because honestly, that's what it is. It's a new tax on every install of your game, and I think this is the biggest, dumbest PR move they could possibly make. And yeah, that's where I stand on it. Now, if they implemented this as a new system, they want to do some kind of an install/rev share model and replace the per seat license and you had additional choices, sure, great idea. But this isn't that. But I'm curious what you think of the new Unity pricing, of the new, I shall call it, Unity tax on the runtime. Let me know in the comments down below, and I will talk to you all later. Goodbye.